I had just gotten off work and headed to the gym. This was back when I was in college, so I worked a few hours after class at the local grocery store. I wasn't making very much money, but working out was important to me, so I had purchased a gym membership from a small 24-hour gym in a sketchy part of town. It wasn't ideal, but it was affordable, and at that point in my life, that's all that mattered. I had been working closing shifts that month, so by the time I got to the gym, it was after midnight. I was the only one there, which I liked. I had been working out since high school and was confident in a gym setting, but I still preferred to work out alone. About 30 minutes into my workout, I heard the bell over the door ring, signaling someone had come inside. This wasn't odd, as the night cleaner, an old man named George, usually came in around this time. George was a pretty friendly guy, so I turned to greet him, but was startled to see a man I didn't recognize standing in the doorway staring at me. He was tall and thin, with dark, shaggy hair. For some reason, his eyes were open very wide as he looked at me. That creeped me out, but he wore the same type of janitor uniform that George always wore, so I assumed he was a new employee. "Hey," I said politely. The man just stared back at me with his freakishly wide eyes. "Hi," he finally said back. He looked around the room and walked to the custodian closet, taking out a mop and bucket. Not thinking much of the guy, I went back to finish my set. As I continued my workout, the man clumsily mopped some of the floor and then took out a rag, dusting some things on the front desk. Something was off about this guy. He gave me the creeps. The gym walls were covered in mirrors, and every time I glanced in a mirror at the man, he was staring directly at me with those unsettling wide eyes. A shiver went down my spine as I thought about the strange guy watching me lift. I decided to wrap up my workout early and walked into the locker room. After a quick shower, I grabbed my stuff and walked back out into the gym area, where I saw the guy's mop bucket left in the middle of the floor. The gym was empty. I walked to the door, catching myself as I started to call, "See you tomorrow, George," out of habit. At this point, George would usually crack some joke like, "Not unless I see you first." Thinking about George's cheerful responses made me smile as I opened the door. I walked outside to the parking lot, which was deserted except for my car and one I hadn't seen at the gym before. The janitor must have still been here then. I walked over to my car, opened the door, and got in. I put it in reverse, looking down at the backup camera on my dashboard screen. I nearly had a heart attack when I saw the janitor's face on the screen staring into the camera. "What the fuck?" I exclaimed to myself. This creep was crouching down behind my car. At this point, I was a little pissed off. I got out of my car and confronted the janitor, who was now on his feet. "Hey, what is your deal, buddy?" I shouted at him. "Can I help you with something?" The tall man started to stutter frantically, claiming he had dropped something. "I thought it rolled under your car. I'm sorry." He was very apologetic. I stared back at the guy, trying to figure out if he was telling the truth. "Oh yeah?" I shot back at him, still trying to sound angry. "What did you drop?" "It was your headphone case," the janitor replied. "I found it while cleaning the locker room and came out to return it to you, but dropped it as I approached your car." I paused. Come to think of it, I didn't remember grabbing my headphone case from the bench as I left the locker room. Was this guy legit? Was he actually just crouching down to get my headphones under my car? The whole thing seemed weird, but the guy was definitely socially awkward and maybe just didn't know any better. "Show me," I said to him. The man stooped down, reached under my rear bumper, and stood back up, producing my headphone case from his hand. I was shocked. Thanks," I said, starting to feel like a real dick. I took them and turned toward my car door. "Wait," the guy said. What's your Snapchat?" Okay, it was getting weird again. I sighed. "Look, man, no offense, but I don't know you." "I'm Kyle," he replied, sounding hopeful. I thought for a second. This guy probably had no friends, and in a way I felt bad for him. He was creepy, but he probably didn't know any better. Besides, if he was going to be working at the gym, then I was probably going to see him a lot, and I didn't want it to be awkward in the future. What the hell? I thought. I pulled out my phone. "All right, Kyle," I said. "Here's my Snapchat. After all, if you're going to be working." As I opened the app, I halfway glanced up at him, noticing the name sewn onto his work shirt. My blood suddenly ran cold. I hadn't even thought to look at his name until he had brought it up, but now that I had, I froze in disbelief. I stared in horror at the name on his shirt. George. I looked up at the guy's wide eyes, which stared at me without even blinking. His mouth slowly twisted into a terrifying smile. Suddenly, the guy lunged at me, grabbing for my arms. I turned to run, but not quick enough. I was knocked to the ground with him on top of me. I rolled over to my back, but he sat on my chest. He held my arms down with surprising strength. I tried to scream for help, but couldn't. There was too much weight on my chest. I couldn't talk. I couldn't move. The man just sat there, staring down at me with his huge eyes and fucked up smile. "Stop!" someone shouted behind us. The guy looked around. He suddenly jumped to his feet and began running across the parking lot, but was quickly tackled by 2 police officers. After a brief struggle, they got him in handcuffs and put him in the back of their car. One of the cops came and helped me up off the ground. The cop asked me if I was okay, then offered to escort me home, which I gladly accepted. It turned out Kyle, or whatever his name was, didn't work at the gym. Police were able to call George, who told them that his tires had been slashed, which is why he didn't show up for his shift. A uniform had also been taken from his car. I hardly slept at all for the next few weeks. I stopped going to the gym at night and started picking up early morning shifts at work. I couldn't stop thinking about what a close call that night had been. If it wasn't for the fact that the guy forgot to look at the name on the shirt he stole, who knows what would have happened to me. One thing I do know for sure is that now, every time I close my eyes at night, I see that guy's terrifying eyes staring at me.